The Galactic Council chamber floated in the void between star systems, a massive crystalline structure that caught and refracted the light of distant suns into prismatic rainbows across its transparent walls. Within its cavernous interior, delegates from dozens of species occupied tiered seating that rose in concentric circles around a central platform. Bioluminescent archalians pulsed with soft blue radiance, their translucent skin revealing intricate circulatory systems beneath. Towering Centauri delegates sat like living sculptures of polished crystal, their faceted forms catching and reflecting the chamber's ambient light. Insectoid Kruth ambassadors clicked and chittered among themselves, their compound eyes glittering like black diamonds as they observed the proceedings with alien calculation. At the center of this alien assembly stood Commander Elena Drake, her human form appearing almost fragile compared to the massive beings surrounding her. Her military dress uniform bore the insignia of Earth's Unified Defense Command, but the fabric showed scorch marks and stress tears from recent combat operations. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, though several strands had escaped to frame her angular face. Green eyes, hardened by years of interstellar warfare, surveyed the assembled delegates with growing unease as she recognized the hostile atmosphere that had replaced what was once warm alliance. At the center of this alien assembly stood Commander Elena Drake, her human form appearing almost fragile compared to the massive being surrounding her. Her military dress uniform bore the insignia of Earth's Unified Defense Command, but the fabric showed scorch marks and stress tears from recent combat operations. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, though several strands had escaped to frame her angular face. Green eyes, hardened by years of interstellar warfare, surveyed the assembled delegates with growing unease as she recognized the hostile atmosphere that had replaced what was once warm alliance. The Archelian speaker rose from its designated seat, all four of its elongated arms extending in a gesture Elena had learned to recognize as dismissive contempt. The being's translucent blue skin began to pulse with deeper, angrier hues as it spoke through the chamber's universal translator. Honored delegates, humanity has become a liability to galactic stability. Their military tactics are too aggressive, their expansion too rapid, their methods too... unpredictable. The word hung in the air like an accusation, and Elena felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon her. A massive Centauri delegate, whose crystalline form towered nearly 3 meters above the platform, brought one of its boulder-sized fists down against the chamber floor. The impact sent vibrations through the entire structure, and Elena had to steady herself against the tremor. They refused to follow established protocols. The Centauri boomed, its voice resonating like struck crystal. In every conflict they improvise, they break conventions that have governed civilized warfare for millennia. They cannot be controlled or predicted. The lead Kruth ambassador, a nightmare amalgamation of chitin and metal that clicked its mandibles in rapid staccato bursts, added its voice to the growing chorus of condemnation. Their expansion threatens the delicate balance we have maintained since the formation of this council. They reproduce too quickly, adapt too rapidly, and their territorial ambitions know no bounds. They are a cancer that will consume the galaxy if left unchecked. Elena's jaw tightened as she watched species after species beings she had fought alongside, bled with, and saved from extinction turn against Earth with calculated precision. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides, the knuckles whitening as she struggled to maintain diplomatic composure. These were the same aliens who had begged for human assistance when the Void Swarm had threatened to devour their homeworlds, the same species who had praised human ingenuity and adaptability when it suited their purposes. Above them all, the council chirping slowly rose from its throne-like seat. The entity was an ancient creature of uncertain origin, its massive tentacled form wreathed in shadows that seemed to move independently of any light source. Clusters of red eyes, each the size of a human head, opened along its bulk as it prepared to render judgment. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons, echoing through the chamber with finality that brooked no argument. The motion has been presented and debated, all in favor of containing the human threat. A forest of appendages, claws, and crystalline formations rose in unanimous agreement. The motion: humanity will be contained by any means necessary. Elena's hand moved instinctively to the communicator at her collar, her voice cutting through the chamber's murmurs of satisfaction like a blade. Earth Defense Command, this is Commander Drake. Initiate condition red protocols immediately. All allied forces have been reclassified as hostile. Repeat, all allies have turned. The words tasted like ash in her mouth, but she spoke them with military precision, knowing that millions of human lives hung in the balance of this moment. The chamber erupted into chaos as alien delegates began shouting in dozens of languages, their various appendages waving in agitation and what Elena could only interpret as bloodthirsty anticipation. Some seemed pleased by the turn of events, while others appeared to harbor reservations about the decision they had just made. But the vote was final, and Elena knew that diplomatic solutions were no longer possible. She began backing toward the chamber's exit, her hand hovering over the sidearm at her hippo weapon that would be laughably inadequate against the assembled alien might. but which provided psychological comfort nonetheless. "So much for the alliance that saved you all from the Void Swarm," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I hope you remember what human determination looks like when we're fighting for our survival instead of yours." The space around Earth's orbital zone told the stark story of humanity's sudden isolation. What had been friendly allied patrols, just hours before, had transformed into an impenetrable blockade that stretched across every approach to the blue-white marble of humanity's homeworld. Sleek Arcalian cruisers hung in perfect formation, their bioengineered hulls pulsing with the same blue radiance as their crews. Massive Zentari dreadnoughts floated like crystalline cathedrals, their faceted surfaces refracting starlight into weapon-grade lasers. Clouds of Kruth fighters moved in perfect synchronization, their collective intelligence coordinating movements that no individual pilot could match. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a command bunker that had been excavated from solid rock and reinforced with the strongest materials human engineering could provide, emergency lighting cast blood-red shadows across banks of tactical displays and communication equipment. The facility hummed with desperate activity as officers and technicians rushed between stations, their faces illuminated by the glow of screens showing impossible odds and dwindling options. The air recycling systems couldn't quite keep up with the stress-induced perspiration of hundreds of personnel working at maximum capacity. Elena materialized on the facility's primary teleporter pad in a shower of golden sparks, her uniform still smoking from the energy discharge of emergency transportation through Earth's atmosphere. She strode through corridors lined with reinforcement struts and blast barriers, returning the salutes of officers who looked to her for answers she wasn't sure she possessed. The weight of command had never felt heavier than in these moments, when the survival of her entire species hung in the balance. Admiral Chun, a weathered veteran whose face bore the scars of 3 decades of interstellar warfare, turned from a holographic display that showed the alien fleet positions in devastating detail. "Commander Drake, they're broadcasting demands for unconditional surrender on all frequencies, complete disarmament, dissolution of our military forces, and submission to Council oversight of all human activities." His voice carried the strain of a man who had seen too many battles and knew exactly what the aliens' terms meant for human independence. Elena studied the tactical readout with eyes that had learned to quickly assess impossible situations and find the narrow paths to victory that others might miss. The red icons representing enemy forces outnumbered the green symbols of human ships by ratios. If not for her intimate knowledge of human capability when cornered, "How long until they begin enforcement actions?" she asked, her mind already racing through contingency plans and desperate strategies. 12 hours, Chun replied, his weathered features showing every year of his age as the stress of command took its toll. "Every world government is asking for guidance. Some are already talking about surrender to minimize civilian casualties. The President wants your assessment of our actual combat capabilities against these odds." Above ground, the surface world had descended into chaos as news of humanity's betrayal spread through global communication networks. In New York City, the vertical highways that threaded between towering skyscrapers became death traps as panicking pilots abandoned their flying vehicles to crash into building faces in showers of glass and metal. Emergency services were overwhelmed within minutes as millions tried to flee to underground shelters. London's ancient Thames reflected the orange glow of fires that burned unchecked across the metropolitan area. The famous clock face of Big Ben had been converted to display a countdown timer showing the hours and minutes remaining until the alien ultimatum expired, its illuminated numbers visible for kilometers as a stark reminder of humanity's deadline. In Tokyo, massive holographic advertising displays that normally showed consumer products had been commandeered to broadcast the aliens' surrender demands in scrolling text visible from orbit. Citizens gathered in stunned silence in public squares, their faces turned upward to watch their former protectors explain exactly how humanity would be neutered and controlled. Sydney's magnificent harbor, normally filled with pleasure craft and commercial vessels, emptied rapidly as every ship capable of orbital insertion raced toward the sky. Military vessels led the exodus, their hulls bristling with weapons and armor as they prepared for what might be humanity's final battle. The iconic Opera House stood silhouetted against a sky crisscrossed with the exhaust trails of ascending spacecraft. In Moscow's Red Square, citizens had spontaneously gathered with whatever weapons they could find: hunting rifles, kitchen knives, improvised clubs, and even ancient ceremonial swords from museums. Their breath created white clouds in the frigid air as they chanted defiant slogans in dozens of languages, refusing to accept that humanity's long journey among the stars would end in submission. Elena walked through the command bunker's main corridor, her boots echoing against reinforced deck plating, as she passed teams of engineers, frantically welding additional armor plates to critical structural points. Sparks cascaded around her like falling stars as plasma cutters and arc welders worked at maximum output, their operators racing against time to harden humanity's last stronghold. In the facility's advanced weapons laboratory, Dr. Sarakim worked with desperate intensity over a device that hummed with barely contained quantum energies. The scientist's normally pristine lab coat was stained with coolant fluid and marked with burn holes from energy The quantum disruptors are ready for deployment, she reported without looking up from her calibrations. But we only have enough exotic matter to construct 3 functional units. Each one can theoretically punch through any known shielding system, but we'll need to make every shot count. Elena examined the weapon with the eye of someone who had seen enough battlefield technology to recognize genuine innovation when she encountered it. The device's surface crackled with contained energy that seemed to bend light around its edges, creating small reality distortions that hurt to look at directly. "What about the viral AI protocols we've been developing for network infiltration?" she asked, her tactical mind already working to combine multiple assets into a coherent battle plan. Dr. Kim's eyes lit up with the dangerous enthusiasm of a scientist whose theoretical work was about to be tested under the most extreme conditions imaginable. "The aliens rely heavily on networked communication systems to coordinate their fleet movements. If we can breach even one ship's communication array and introduce our viral code, we might be able to cascade through their entire command structure. But it's completely untested technology we're essentially experimenting during combat. High above Earth's surface, in the shipyard facilities that orbited Luna like metallic moons, human engineers and technicians swarmed over the last functional vessels of humanity's Starfleet. Welding torches created brief constellations of light against the backdrop of Earth's blue marble, as workers raced to install weapons, armor, and defensive systems that had never been designed to work together. The UNS Defiance, flagship of humanity's space forces, floated at the center of the lunar shipyard like a wounded predator preparing for its final hunt. The massive vessel's hull bore the scars of dozens of battles fought across the galaxy, plasma scoring from void swarm impact craters from kinetic bombardments, and patches of replacement armor that told stories of survival against impossible odds. Despite its battle damage, the ship bristled with retrofitted weapons systems and experimental technology. Captain Rodriguez, the Defiance's commanding officer, personally supervised the loading of Dr. Kim's quantum disruptors into specially modified torpedo tubes. The weapon's exotic energy signatures cast eerie blue shadows across the hangar bay as technicians worked with extreme caution. "These things better work as advertised," Doc Rodriguez called out to Dr. Kim over the communication system, "because if they don't, we're going to be very dead very quickly." Elena entered the Defiance's bridge through the main access corridor, her footsteps echoing against metal grating that had been scuffed by countless military boots over the ship's years of service. The bridge crew snapped to attention as she appeared, their faces showing a mixture of fear and determination that Elena recognized from every hopeless battle she had ever fought. These were soldiers who understood the odds they faced but refused to surrender without a fight. The main view screen activated with a soft chime, displaying the approaching alien armada in all its terrifying magnificence. Thousands of ships filled the display, their formations so perfect and overwhelming that they seemed to blot out entire starfields. Each vessel represented technology and firepower that had been refined over millennia of galactic warfare, and together they formed a force that could sterilize entire solar systems without breaking formation. A holographic transmission materialized in the center of the bridge, the Arcalian speaker's blue form shimmering with condescension and barely restrained hostility. Its forearms moved in gestures that Elena's cultural briefings had taught her to interpret as expressions of superiority and contempt. When it spoke, its voice carried the tone of a parent addressing a particularly troublesome child. "Commander Drake, you have exactly 1 standard hour to signal Earth's complete and unconditional surrender. Kneel before the Council's authority, and we might show enough mercy to allow your species to continue existing under proper supervision." She drew her sidearm and placed it deliberately on the command console, the metallic click audible throughout the bridge as a symbolic declaration of defiance. "Every human ship, this is Commander Drake broadcasting on all frequencies. Load all weapons. Power up every system. Today we remind the galaxy exactly why they needed us to fight their battles for them." Across the ragtag human fleet, weapon systems that had been hastily retrofitted in experimental technologies, had never been tested in combat, came online with electronic whines and power surges. Particle cannons extended from hidden compartments, missile tubes irised open like mechanical flowers, and Dr. Kim's quantum disruptors hummed with barely contained energies that seemed to warp space around them. The ships themselves might have been outnumbered and outgunned, but they carried the accumulated ingenuity and desperation of an entire species. Elena's image was simultaneously broadcast to every human vessel in the fleet and every planetary command center on Earth's surface. "They abandoned us when we fought the Void Swarm," she declared, her voice growing stronger with each word. "They used our tactics, our sacrifice, our innovation to save their own civilizations. They praised our adaptability when it served their purposes and called us heroes when we bled for their worlds." Her fist rose into the air as she continued. "Now they fear what they created. They want to leash the very spirit that saved their civilizations from extinction. They believe they can chain human determination and control human ingenuity. Today we prove them wrong. On Earth's surface, millions of people watched her speech on emergency broadcasts. It reached into every bunker, shelter, and refugee camp on the planet. In the underground tunnels beneath major cities, humans gripped whatever weapons they could find: military hardware, improvised explosives, even kitchen knives and baseball bats. Children too young to understand the full implications still sensed the gravity in their parents' faces. "Today we stand alone," Elena declared, her voice carrying the weight of every human dream of freedom among the stars. "But we stand armed to the teeth, and we will not yield." The alien fleet began its final approach, their perfect formation splitting into attack wings with mathematical precision. Arcalian ships pulsed with bioluminescent energy as their organic weapon systems prepared to fire. Zentari vessels gleamed like deadly jewels, their crystalline hulls focusing and amplifying stellar radiation into devastating laser arrays. Kruth swarms moved like mechanical locusts, their collective intelligence coordinating attack patterns that no individual pilot could hope to counter. Elena settled back into her command chair, her fingers dancing over tactical controls that would determine the fate of her species. "All ships, execute Protocol Wildfire," she ordered with the calm voice of someone who had made peace with impossible odds. "Let's show them what human ingenuity looks like when we're fighting for our lives instead of theirs."